Wonderful. Well, thank you all for joining today's webinar on the Sustainable Business Model Challenge hosted by Ensemble Freelancer and NASA. Today we will be going over a lot of the core components of the challenge, but before we begin, we did want to do a quick round of introductions to introduce you to the team that's helping facilitate this important prize competition. My name is Oliver Gerland. I'm a challenge strategist at Ensemble. We are a open innovation consultancy that supports the federal government to design and execute prize competitions, and then I'm also joined by Julia, our challenge manager. Julia, you want to quickly introduce yourself and then pass it to the freelancer team?
Yeah, sure thing. Hi, everyone. I'm Julia Carlson, and I'm with Ensemble, serving as the challenge manager on this project. And yeah, very excited for the webinar today and to share more about the challenge. And I will pass it on over to our freelancer team, Trisha and Jenny.
Hi folks, I'm Trisha. I'm not on this screen because I'm just covering today for Daria, who's the project manager from the Freelancer team. So I'm the program manager here at Freelancer. We're a crowdsourced platform and we're the place where you're going to enter your submissions. So we'll be able to help you with any questions that you have about how to enter the submission. And I'm joined here in the same room actually, by Jenny, and Jenny can introduce herself too.
Hi folks, I'm Jenny. I will be working alongside Trisha and Daria on this project with Ensemble and NASA, just as a support on the freelancer side as well. And then I can pass it on to Jason.
Thanks, team. What an awesome crew. I am Jason Kessler, and I run NASA's SBIR STTR program, and I'm the challenge owner. Really glad to have you joining us and excited to see what this will produce. I'll hand off to the brains of the operation on the NASA side, Ian and Keiko.
All right, wonderful. Thanks, Jason. Appreciate the kind introduction. I'm Ian Brosnan. I am the project scientist for NASA Earth Exchange. We're based out of here in Silicon Valley. And I think my job today is just to give you some insight into accessing not only Nexus data, but the broader NASA data sets. And I will turn it over to Keiko, who Oliver, I think, is as an attendee if we haven't been able to bring her up to panelist yet.
I'm here, I'm promoted. Hi everyone, my name is Keiko. I'm a research scientist at NASA Ames, just like Ian. Very happy to be here and looking forward to questions and discussions.
Wonderful. Thank you to all. So today we will be going over the background and structure of the challenge, really the objectives and goals. What is the government trying to achieve with this competition? Give you a high-level overview of the prizes to be won, including non-monetary cyber readiness training prizes. Then we're just going to walk you through the registration and submission process. One of the important things to appreciate with prize challenges in general is that we are attempting to make the barriers to entry very low to make it a great first step to engage with the US government, and make the barrier to entry low burden so that really you can focus on your content and your concept as opposed to any complex submission or approval processes. So that will be using the freelancer platform. It's also important to go over the judging as well as eligibility, and we will also touch on the intellectual property treatment for this competition, and then close out with some timeline and also Q&A. So there is a Q&A box which you can access via the control bar. So feel free to drop questions in there as we go. We will have about 5 to 10 minutes to process questions at the end of the webinar. But with that, I'd like to just pass it on over to Jason just to kind of give us an overview of the challenge. Why is NASA interested in running this competition? So Jason, please take it away.
Thanks, Ollie. So as I mentioned, I lead NASA's SBIR STTR program. We are about a $200 million award program that we fund small businesses, as you see, that have fewer than 500 employees. And one of our program priorities is to try to bring in as many new to NASA small businesses as possible, because we believe that really great innovation is coming from folks that aren't necessarily playing with us. And so we release a solicitation, and we run the program in phases. And we support all of NASA's missions: aeronautics, human exploration, all the sciences, and space technology. And having spent a bunch of my career working in earth science, and also focused in the developing world, I had recognized that there's a tremendous amount of NASA data, NASA tools that have been created. And you'll hear more about data from Ian and Keiko. But oftentimes those are built without an understanding of what the recurring revenue is going to be. How do we actually sustain a pilot project? Just simple web services cost. As soon as the pilot's over, if that's not been built in, then the amazing tool might get put onto the shelf. And so working initially with colleagues at NOAA, we thought this would be a great way to engage a bunch of new to NASA firms and potentially incentivize people to start small businesses that would be able to utilize this incredible inventory of NASA data and find use cases where you could figure out what unit economics might be to sustain that tool and delivering value to firms, people all across the country. And so that's what we've done. We created this incentive prize to bring you in, spark your innovation and ingenuity to take the NASA data and develop a model that would allow you to build a sustainable business. And then the winners of that prize will then go through a kind of a training if necessary, or just a review and analysis of where you are, so that you're going to be more ready to propose an SBIR solicitation. So the timeline setups that will go through this, review the proposals, select winners, and then prepare the winners to be more successful within the SBIR STTR program. That's probably more than you needed, so I will hand back to Ollie, but I'm around if you have questions.
Yep, awesome. So we did, as Jason was alluding to, really this is a two-phase challenge, but ultimately the second phase is totally dedicated to the cyber capability training and readiness training. So in beginning in phase one, all teams will submit a 10-page business concept paper into Freelancer, and up to 10 teams will then be awarded $10,000. So that $10,000 is a prize just for submitting a quality business concept paper that ranks highly within the evaluation criteria. And of course, the intention here is to advance you or your team to phase two to prepare you for a cyber phase one. So as we were saying, there's training, but then there also is going to be some kind of one-on-one readiness assessments. So that is also kind of a part of the prize, a non-monetary incentive that we hope will be really valuable to teams, so that you can take advantage of that and win. Maybe your first cyber phase one, maybe your second cyber phase one. But for those unaware, those can be very crucial to incubating new companies and put you on a pathway to doing business with the government. So again, just to reiterate, what's in it for you? Why should you care? Why should you apply? We try to develop both monetary and non-monetary incentives to really make this a high value program for the US government and for the participants. So like I said, 100,000 in total prize purse distributed to up to 10 winners, the 10-week capability development training, and then expert feedback with kind of one-on-one readiness assessments to really kind of round it out and help you help advance your concept over the next 6-12 months. So just to go over the overall challenge, we're seeking entrepreneurs, researchers, startups, innovators, academics, graduate students, really anyone who's interested in leveraging NASA's publicly available Earth system data to create sustainable business models to help build a resilient infrastructure. This is our goal with this competition, and you know, we can kind of see those and cross 4 different dimensions: building sustainable businesses with scalable data solutions, aligning data with market needs to address these challenges, of course, creating a pathway to the SBIR program, and then engaging new talent. It is very important to us that we are reaching folks who have not yet ever submitted into SBIR Phase 1. That is one of the kind of core target markets or target audiences with this competition. With that, I will go ahead and pass it over to Ian and Keiko to walk us through the overall data and just get an overall picture of, the Earth system science data that NASA has.
Wonderful, thanks. So this slide you're first seeing is going to be your landing point. But it won't take you, as I understand, to the data. That will come once you register. So Ollie, could we go to the next slide? Thanks. So the bulk of NASA's data, particularly the data that comes in through the major missions, satellite missions in flight, and major modeling activities, you can find through the Earth Data Portal. And so what I'm showing here is the landing or splash page for earthdata.gov, earthdata.nasa.gov. And you'll see towards the bottom here, there is both a catalog, a selection of tools that you can use to analyze the data. And then if you sign up through earthdata.nasa.gov, you'll also get information on data alerts and outages. So that will cover such things as a reprocessing of a satellite mission data set, which happens with some frequency, but not that often. This is usually when algorithms have been made or updated, there's new algorithms introduced, or we've recalibrated the sensor and they need to reprocess the historical data to account for that. Ollie, can we go to the next slide? So this is also on that same initial splash page. This particular section may be more useful if you're working in a specific sector. This will allow you to browse data by topics, and you can see it covers a pretty wide range of activities. And so we're not going to click through all of these today, but I'll leave them here if you need them. Ollie, next slide. Okay, so the great thing about NASA data is that most of the major missions and models are at earthdata.gov, but there are also a lot of key products that have been developed by different research teams that either aren't captured in Earth data yet or are on their way there. And one of these that may be of interest to you is the products that have been developed by my team here at the NASA Earth Exchange. And these are our 2 climate projections, possibly 3, depending on how you count. So the first is NEXT GDDP, or the Global Daily Downscale Climate Projections. We have versions of this for CMIP-6, which is the most recent coupled model intercomparison project. We also have GDDP for CMIP-5 if for any reason you need to use that. So this is global. It's 25-kilometer spatial scale. It's a daily. The CMIP-6 version has a number of different variables there: temperature, precipitation, relative humidity, wind speed, and downwelling radiation. That's a plus up of the the CMIP-5 version. And the other thing that we have developed are what we're calling impact indicators, which are calculations from those variables such as fire weather index and wet bulb globe temperature, which is a measure of heat stress. And so I've put the link in here. You access that through NASA's Climate Services at Goddard. And then going down to the next product, this is a CONUS product. This is a much higher resolution, 800-meter product. Or if you're looking in Hawaii now, we have a 250-meter product there. These are daily, but have a more restricted set of variables, including temperature, precipitation, and vapor pressure. Vapor pressure is actually calculated from both the model and from the historical data set. So something to keep in mind, it's not a native product out of the original models, nor is it a native product in the historical data sets we use to create these. And these ones you will access actually through the data portal here at Ames as opposed to Goddard, and we have the link in there. So, and that image or globe spinning on the right there, that is a estimate of projected temperature change under one of the most extreme emission scenarios, but it gives you a sense of the kind of data that we can provide from GDDP. I think that is all the data slides. Keiko, did you have anything to add?
No, that sounds great. We can take questions later if anyone has any.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Keiko. Okay, Ollie, back to you.
Thank you. Yep. So I know I've already hit on this, so I will be brief, but 10 winners up to $10,000 and then the 10-week capability training. So let's dive into the registration. So the big call out for everyone who is interested is to go and register today. It's very easy. It is basically registering to create a freelance user account if you have not already done so. And then once you do that, you will be able to find the challenge and register on the registration form. So there is a additional challenge registration form which is required to enter into the challenge. But I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to the freelancer team just to walk you through the demo of how that works. So just give us a sec to change screens. All right, Jenny, you should be able to take it away.
Great. Awesome. So once you visit the freelancer page and head over to the Sustainable Business Model Challenge, you'll see this landing page here. If you scroll down a little bit, there'll be a bar overhead that you can see more details of our challenge, one being the overview. So if you scroll down, you'll get more information on the challenge background, goals, some of the data sources that you can use. And at the very bottom, this might be helpful for some of you folks. There is a clarification board where you can ask questions about the challenge, and we'll respond to those directly. You'll also see an entries tab. Don't fret if you don't see any entries there. They're sealed, meaning that just you and the challenge team will be able to see your entry. There's also a guidelines section to see more on registration and submission details, guidelines, and judging criteria if you scroll a little bit lower. You'll also see the timeline, a reminder of our great prizes, any updates, and supplementary files. But going back to what we're here for and how to log in and register, in the guidelines section, you'll see that there are two really easy steps. One, you'll just have to register on the freelancer platform, and two, you'll have to complete this registration form. So at the top bar here, you'll see sign up or log in. I already have an account, so I'm going to log in directly. There is an option to log in with Google, which I'll be using today, and it will log me in. Great. So now I'm logged in, and you can complete this challenge registration form, which I can open now. You can register as an individual, a team, or an entity, meaning you're on behalf of an institution or an organization. Today, I'll just show you what it would be like to be an individual. I'm registering today as an individual. You'll just have to fill in some brief information about yourself, including your freelancer account username, which is why we had to register beforehand. Your country of residence, and you'll have to be over 18 in age as well. And then at the bottom, we'll just have some additional information that you'll have to check off and read through carefully before you can submit your registration. Once you're done that, and if you want to submit your entry and you're confident, there is a pink submit entry button here on the right side that you can click. And it's a few easy steps where you can submit your entry and drop your file. You can feel free to give your entry a title and a description as well. If you do use any stock content or photography, you'll have to declare that here as well. And then at the very bottom, you'll see that your entry is automatically sealed. Again, this means that your entry will only be visible to you and the challenge team, and then you can feel free to submit your entry. If you have any questions, we can answer them at the very end, or you can also use the clarification board, but I'll pass it back to the ensemble team.
Thanks, Jenny. Yeah, I do want to call out that clarification board is very helpful. We are, really trying to address your questions and we will be as responsive as possible. But that clarification board or kind of FAQ board can be a really great way to quickly get some questions answered. That is the kind of venue for, you could call it like customer service for this challenge. So let me go ahead and reshare my screen. So after you've registered on Freelancer, registered for the challenge itself, you will be able to submit your paper. And so really there are four elements that this paper should address. Number one, a clear value proposition and market fit for the business model itself. We also really are interested in some level of analysis on the customer base, as well as analysis on the data format or delivery format preferences. Um, there are a lot of different stakeholders, potential stakeholders or users of the data. And with our kind of discovery when preparing to launch this, one of the most crucial elements was delivering data in a format that is ingestible or interpretable by the user or end stakeholder. So doing that level of analysis is very important because that will justify that the customer has a need for this data and are able to kind of take action or gather insights from it. So having that analysis will be important in your concept paper. Then, of course, this is a business model challenge. We want to understand, unit economics as well as a commercialization plan, albeit, you only have 1 or 2 pages for each of these sections. So it won't be incredibly in-depth, but it is very important to consider what that business model will look like. And then, of course, last but not least, is that all of the submissions must include the integration of at least one NASA Earth System Science data source. So if you are able to do all four of those things, we think you have a very good shot and will be able to submit a quality proposal, or excuse me, quality business concept paper. So what are the elements of this concept paper? Like we kind of mentioned, the title, abstract, and then 10 pages or less, but that's excluding the title page and table of contents pages as well. You will produce kind of responses for the licensed content to justify that the entry is your own. And then in the entry sales price, if that is still an option, I forget if that's default or not, but you'll put 10,000 for the sell price, as that is the max amount for the challenge. So just to kind of go over what in general we recommend for the business concept paper, these are, like I kind of mentioned, recommended page counts, but a title page with the team name, title of application, and then contact information. And then a page on the overall business model and a description that describes the NASA data source. So a detailed explanation of the model and how that business model leverages Earth system science data. And then, of course, we will understand what the value proposition is to the user or the customer. And then, like we kind of mentioned, the focus here is on building resilient infrastructure. So if you can connect the value proposition and the Earth system science data to supporting resilient infrastructure, that also would be a wonderful addition. Another thing, we do want to know how you actually plan to ingest the data, extract the data, then do some level of transformations or processing, storage. We do want to see what that system architecture or what that kind of data flow looks like. So a visual diagram of the overall data and how that can be leveraged by the business. That's something that we're looking for. We recommend about a page. And then we also do really want to see this assessment of market fit, the preferred data delivery format, and then based on that, like who's the customer, right? Tell us what is the potential market, define who that target customer is. Ideally, you should be able to highlight qualitative or quantitative data and outline the potential for this market entry. And we are looking for evidence that the preferred data delivery type and formats do meet the needs of end customer or users based on discovery data, based on other, qualitative or quantitative data or evidence. And then, like we said, for example, if you've done customer interviews or if there is industry analysis or verifiable traction metrics, that'll be very important to add to that section. Again, we're looking for the description of the business's unit economics and the overall kind of financial model for consideration, and then also the commercialization plan. And it is important to appreciate that in all SBIR Phase 1 applications, there is a commercialization plan section. So if you were to be successful in NASA SBIRs or SBIRs, then every successful NASA SBIR proposal has a strong commercialization plan. So that's kind of, a real kind of underpinning for this challenge is making sure that those commercialization plans are really strong. And like we said, you should be able to transition that commercialization plan into a NASA SBIR Phase 1 proposal. And of course, we would give the winners feedback, but again, it's a super important step to add to this business concept paper. So just some other kind of general guidance or considerations. Customer discovery is super important. So really this is doing interviews, you could do surveys, but diving deep and understanding the customer's needs and pain points, there's a variety of different verticals that this data could be used, from insurance to farming to, agriculture and insurance and all sorts of different creative methods or use cases that are possible. But those need to be grounded on a true user frustration, pain point, requirement, need, however you want to define it. We are really looking for some level of customer discovery that has been done to verify that this business has legs and it has potential. Utilizing the Earth system science data, validating the data, making sure that the data format is accessible. This could be, based on the data, it could be, API delivery, it could be CSV, some other kind of JSON product. We're not sure. We would be interested in what the customer really is looking for. And all these other elements I've already touched on, but just important to consider all of these elements to make sure that your business concept paper is well-rounded. So another good question is, how will everything be evaluated? There's 5 elements that we're going to be looking here. Use and integration of NASA Earth science data, the market fit and customer base, business viability, financial sustainability, and then scalability and data infrastructure. We do want to know, if so the use and integration of NASA Earth science data is pretty straightforward. Then the market fit and customer base potential, again, looking at that, does the submission demonstrate a clear understanding of the target market and customer needs and an understanding of the preferred data delivery formats? Of course, we're interested in the business model. And then financial sustainability. We do want to understand if there is a clear strategy for for financial sustainability. And then we also do want to look at if your team is considering the costs and the overall scalability of running a data business. So that's part of that is with the system architecture diagram. But does the solution propose cost-effective measures for data storage and computation, such as on-demand data pulling from NASA? Of course, folks who work with the cloud and with AI know that sometimes costs can get very high. And so we do want to make sure that you're considering, compute and storage as part of your cost layers, because that will be important for any data-intensive business. So I do want to call out that this competition is you are eligible if you are a US citizen or permanent resident over the age of 18 years. But like I said, you do need to be a US citizen. We do have questions from folks around the world who are perhaps not US citizens. And unfortunately, if you're not a US citizen or permanent resident, or your organization is not an entity incorporated and maintaining a primary place of business in the United States, unfortunately, you are uneligible for this challenge. This is, this is basically a US domestic-based prize competition. I think I saw one question already in the FAQ that was asking what's the minimum number of team members, and so this is a good question. The answer is you can submit this just yourself. You do not need to. You don't even need to have a team. You can just submit it as an individual. So the minimum size for a team is one person. Beyond that, we will need to have proof of citizenship or permanent residence. And if your organization, or if you're submitting as an organization, you will need to be able to submit proof that your business entity maintains a primary place of business in the United States. So pretty straightforward in terms of who is eligible. It's a pretty wide net. And then we can also look at the intellectual property. So I'll read this, but then I'll kind of give some context to what this is saying. So the innovator grants the federal government an irrevocable, paid-up, royalty-free, non-exclusive worldwide license to reproduce, publish, post, link, share, and display publicly the submission on the web and elsewhere, and a non-exclusive, non-transferable, irrevocable, paid-up license to practice or have practiced for on its behalf the solution throughout the world. Each innovator will retain all other intellectual property rights in their submission as applicable. So the first sentence is really, I know it's a little scary, but basically what it's saying is that the federal government can promote your submission. Almost always, this is just like in a blog post that says this person won the competition and congratulations to this person. So just to call out that that's really what that's getting at, is kind of reproducing, publishing, posting. And usually that's just sharing the title and the name of the solution. So, but you will retain all other intellectual property rights in your submission. And then also to participate, each innovator must warrant that there are no legal obstacles to providing the above referenced non-exclusive licenses to the innovator's right to the US federal government. So with that, we will keep pressing on to look at some of the timelines and kind of next steps. So we launched this challenge on January 15th. You have until June to submit your business model proposal. The one major thing to call out is please register today, and so that we have a sense of how many submissions we can anticipate. It is helpful just so that we get a sense of how many judges that we will need to support this prize challenge. So again, just to kind of go over the next steps, we've launched, we're in an open submission period. June 13th is the key date to submit, so please submit your concept papers by June 13th before 5 Eastern, and register whenever you get a moment. And we anticipate announcing winners in August 29th. And then our cyber capability development trainings will begin shortly thereafter. So likely in September. And then we also potentially could run an in-person prize event. This is still TBD. But these are the key dates in terms of the challenge. So like I said, please go ahead and register today. We will be following up with a recording of this webinar as well as with a PDF of the PowerPoint presentation itself. So go ahead and take action. But with that, I think we are just about ready for Q&A. So we will give folks just 1 or 2 seconds to start beginning questions, and then I will start to address them and then pass them over to the NASA team if they are going to be more, if they are better suited to answer like the data questions, for example. So let's just take a moment to submit your questions and we'll begin processing them. All right, I'm going to start addressing some of these. First of all, thank you for submitting some of these questions, and let me go ahead and start answering them. So I'll read them out and then answer them. Is it possible to share our project implemented brief in any other session? So I think the answer is at least in terms of this challenge, no. Really what we're looking for is that business concept paper before June 13th. That is your venue or opportunity to submit a project concept paper. All right, this is a good question. I think I'm going to pass this one over to Jason so you can kind of talk about the variety of business models that we're interested. So the question is, are you looking for business models pertaining to only space exploration?
Interesting question. No, we are really focused on business models that would be addressing a terrestrial need. While space exploration could be an interesting problem to solve, the sustainable business around using NASA Earth science to address that exploration challenge might be a hard one to close. So Ollie gave some examples. If you might imagine an insurance company that is insuring homes, but they don't necessarily have the data team nor the analytics, but you could figure out a way that you apply NASA Earth science data in a way that serves their needs, then you could be building a business plan that would utilize that data set and understand what the insurance company would be willing to pay to be able to do their job better. And then you can multiply those use cases across industries, across the globe. And while we have a US focus, there's no reason why the business wouldn't be or shouldn't be finding customers overseas, because a lot of the problems are global. And while they specific use case might be unique to a particular region or maybe even a city, the ability to translate that across the globe could be a real compelling case.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hopefully that covers it.
Yeah, great. And I'm gonna keep you going, Jason, because this is a very good question. They say, let's suppose I win the challenge. How will that align with an actual topic on the SBIR phase 1 that would follow? So very good question.
It's a great question. It's one of the real challenges and struggles we have, because the way solicitations work, we can't let people know what's going to be in the solicitation. However, we have typically had, and I've been leading the program now for 4 years, we have always had an earth science related topic. And so a strategy might be to go back and look at several years of NASA SBIR solicitations, even STTR, and look at those topic areas. While I can't guarantee that they're a predictor of what will be in the future, they're a good indicator of the kinds of things that we have sought in the past. And so there's currently no legal way for us to directly link a prize competition with a clearly communicated solicitation at this point. We just don't have those authorities. So wish we could.
Yeah, I think it's a good suggestion is to look at previous SBIR topics. There are similar ones to this, and it's not a bad thing to kind of get a lay of the land of what prior topics will be, because it's not, again, we don't know exactly what the solicitation will yield, but take a look at the prior topics as well. That's helpful.
The other thing I'll add is our phase 1 solicitation just closed yesterday. So NASA runs typically an annual solicitation, opens in January, closes in March. That covers all of NASA's missions. And we are in our 4th year of creating what we call SBIR Ignite. SBIR Ignite is released in June and closes in July. And SBIR Ignite is focused much more on commercial success. So where you might envision NASA as the initial buyer of a SBIR phase 1 in our mainline solicitation, and we're looking to infuse or transition those investments into NASA missions, Ignite really is about springboarding through the NASA investment into the commercial marketplace. So firms that are already potentially even selling, but partner with NASA to further de-risk their technology. So not only would I direct you to the phase 1 solicitation, that is our main line, January to March, but also the SBIR Ignite solicitation, which has also consistently had earth science relevant topics.
Yeah. Wonderful, thanks. So here's a question. My local and county have climate initiatives. I would like to align the project with these plans. Is this okay, or should I focus more on the commercial side? So I would say, if you are able to sell or partner or collaborate with a local or county organizations, that's commercialization. They could be potential users or customers of your initiatives or of your projects. So by commercialization, there can be public sector customers. Um, but there could be public sector or private customers. It doesn't, usually the kind of terminology is dual use technology, in that, the government is interested in technologies that can have a use for private and public requirements or needs. So, aligning your project with state or local needs, especially if those state or local needs could translate into potential customers or users of the data, is wonderful. That's really, that would be an element of commercialization. Jason, anything to add to that?
I think that's spot on. As many customers as you can identify will only make your submission that much more robust. And fundamentally, we want to see a thriving business created out of this. So the more sources of customers you can find, the better off I think you'll be.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Another question, has there been any previous winners to this competition that you can talk about what made them stand out and where are they now? So this is the first time that this kind of challenge or competition is being run. So I can't point you anywhere directly. I would just suggest the only other idea is to look at previous SBIR Phase 1 winners. That data is publicly accessible. So you can take a look at other firms who have been successful in SBIR Phase 1s or Phase 2s. You can actually read a little bit about their work, their solutions. So I think that's probably the best option if you're kind of trying to gather some intel on previous winners. Take a look at previous SBIR Phase 1 winners, especially SBIR Phase 1ers who were successful in the kind of Earth system science data realm, because those are going to be similar to your needs. Another question here, how stable is the funding for this prize and the follow-on SBIR already allocated and for sure to be awarded? Yes, based on everything we know that this whole program will continue and be funded, and is working on a contract that is totally stable. So no issues there right now. Can you talk about the SBIR capabilities phase? What should the winning team expect during this phase? So this would be 10 weeks of virtual training. So there would be no real in-person element. You can expect basically like an hour-long training every week for about 10 weeks. And then we would also set up like office hours. So there would probably be one-on-one assessments of every single winning team where an expert in writing SBIR proposals, who we've hired to support this challenge, they would give you one-on-one assessment. But then ultimately we would be running a 10-week virtual course, where you'd, dial in and perhaps have some homework or have some exercises to work on to advance your SBIR proposal. That's basically what that program will look like. Any other questions as they come in? I do have one question. One of our co-founders is 17. More than 50% of the entity is held by 18-year-old though. I do think you can submit as an organization. The key requirement here is that the organization has a primary place of business in the United States. So, I think I would leave anybody who's not over 18, I would leave them off the submission itself and then use your organization as the submitter. But basically, the 17-year-old should not submit anything themselves, as they would be disqualified. Any other questions, especially any questions for Keiko and Ian as it relates to data? Any questions on the data itself that folks, this is a great opportunity to get access to kind of these, NASA or system science data providers.
We don't turn into pumpkins though, so if you come up with questions later, we'll be available.
All right, here's a good one. Is there a REST API or SDK?
I think it depends on which data set you're going to access.
Are there
Yeah.
are there some REST APIs available?
That is a good question. I'm actually not sure. I think some of the DACs may, for some of the smaller data sets that are project oriented as opposed to mission oriented, I would suspect that there are not. The one that may have a good REST API for you that you might take a look at actually is Power. If you just Google NASA, POWER, that'll take you to a project out of Langley that deals primarily with utilities and providing information on solar data.
Great. Can you point us to any data sets you think are underutilized?
Ooh, that's a great question. I would guess most of what is in Earth data is pretty well utilized. And I can tell you that the downscale climate projections are heavily utilized. I can ask around, and if we can find anything folks are particularly interested in having used. I would say the newest data sets are probably relatively underutilized, and the much older NASA data is underutilized. And I guess the caveat I would give you is for some of that older data, there may not be contemporary continuity data from NASA or any of the other space agencies.
Great. And then this is kind of a good follow-on. How do we contact you if we have questions about the data? So please sign up, register, and then use that clarification board. So when you ask a question, that clarification board, our team will process that, collect the answers from the relevant NASA professionals, and then we will update that clarification board. So super important, register, use the clarification board, and then all of the answers will be kind of on that publicly accessible forum. Another question is the Conscious Lifestyle Magazine, can they apply for this grant? So I do want to call out, yes, you could apply for this. This is not a grant. This is a prize. So there is an important distinction there. The SBIR readiness phase ones, those are grants, but this is not a grant. This is a prize where you will be getting an award for the work that you've done to produce the business concept paper. And another element of that reward would be this cyber readiness training. But this is not a grant, so it's a prize. All right, we've got about 5 minutes before we will close out the webinar. Additional questions that may come in?
I'll add a clarifying question for Ian and Keiko potentially to think about, and that is around the downscale modeling. Is it fair to say that there's a tremendous amount of opportunity to consider deploying, utilizing downscale modeling in a use case? I've been told that it's kind of the Wild West and maybe not uniform or well utilized yet. And I just wanted a pressure test if that was accurate, if you have thoughts on, in particular, downscale modeling for this use case.
Yeah, I'm not sure I would characterize it as Wild West,
Okay.
at least while it's inside our fence line. I would say it is a well-documented, robust, and carefully reviewed, validated, and updated data set. What's happening outside the fence line,
That's what
Seems like
I'm
you heard
getting
of that.
at. Yeah.
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 So again, I wouldn't probably characterize it as Wild West. I think there
Okay.
are some pretty great use cases out there already. I think there are probably a boundless opportunities for using it that, maybe novel, new, or underexplored.
Yeah.
We know it's used for insurance. It's in the finance sector, probably a
Mhm.
couple of key ones. I think it's worth a discussion, right, with us. And, I mean, you can find quite a bit of this information, on the internet at this stage, but some of which is pretty valid, right? Which is, what are the limitations of statistically downscaled data, right? It is statistical in nature, so it does not necessarily capture the physics in the way that what we call the dynamically downscaled model would. The trade-off being, right, downscaled models tend only to use one scenario, and they're very localized because they are incredibly difficult to tune, operate, and to essentially validate using the same approaches. So there's your trade. I think if you need to use data at a large spatial scale, global, CONUS, right, or in some places where there's not great availability of these more dynamically downscaled processes, then either of ours will work well for you. But I think maybe that what people are referring to as the Wild West, it might be the I may say, naive use of downscale data,
I think that's right.
most of
Yeah.
which is, I would say, is exploratory, right? I think a
Yeah.
lot of people go in and check it out, and I think that should be Wild West. You should go in and explore what it's good for. But I
Mhm.
think once folks tend to deploy it, it gets to be a bit more sophisticated. Keiko, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like GDDP, our downscale climate projection at the global level would be probably the most popular product
Mm.
among businesses right now.
Mhm.
Like what
Mhm.
Jason said, insurance companies and others using especially the temperature data, precipitation, and applying threshold to create risk indicators. So it'd be great for other businesses to go a little bit beyond that, perhaps fusing with much higher resolution data from remote sensing. How can you take this to the next level? That would be interesting. One other data set I wanted to mention is hyperspectral data would be an
Mm.
interesting one to explore for people here. There aren't many use cases or studies there. I mean, for some are for obvious reasons, they are relatively new, but other reasons are they are very difficult to process and extract information with so many bands. So those are among the data set that would be very interesting to explore.
Hmm. Great. So we have two more questions here, and then we will close out the webinar. I can deploy on several cloud services with various technologies. Do we need to go into the detail about the data schemas within the project? So in general, I would say the answer is yes. Just to kind of go back to our submission guidance. So we do call out that we are looking for a system architecture or data flow diagram recommended 1 page. So you don't have too much page real estate to develop that kind of in-depth data schema or kind of system architecture or the way that the data will flow through the system. But we certainly do want to see that. We want it visualized and described. And within that description, I would imagine that you would define the data schemas and if any transformations need to occur within the schemas and those types of things. So good question. Last question for this webinar, is the NASA data all one way, or are there opportunities to feed back into the data set? For example, insolation data confirmed by on-ground sensors, utility scale solar projects used to validate any NASA predicted data. Good question. I think the answer would be no, there wouldn't be opportunity to feed back into the data set. Any other thoughts from the NASA team?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I guess I don't know that I'm going to give you a universal yes or no. Depending on what you came up with and how it might be used and where we might fit it in, I wouldn't rule it out. But I would say it'll be a fairly high barrier to get the data into our systems as part of a NASA branded data set, if you will. but I think it's worth a discussion. So yeah, again, I
Yeah.
wouldn't rule it out.
Yeah, absolutely. In general, I'd just say that's somewhat outside the scope of this challenge itself, but it's very interesting and something I think the team will look into. Last quick one is the paper is supposed to be 10 pages, but is there a word count limit? So there's no word count limit, keep it within reason. I mean, you can imagine, a judge needs to review this and find it high quality. So, if you try and jam pack too many words in there and it's not readable, then that won't help you. But basically just keep it to 10 pages within reason. Use your best judgment within that kind of parameter. And with that, we will go ahead and close out today's informational webinar. Again, I just really want to thank everyone for joining this call. Your participation is crucial to the success of this program. So we really do thank you for taking the time. I want to thank Jason, Ian, and Keiko for taking the time to give us their expertise, as this is a crucial program. And with that, we will close out today's webinar. Thanks, everyone, and have a great day.
Thanks, Evel.
Thanks for hosting, team. Appreciate it. It's a pleasure talking with everyone.
Cheers.